Today on the show, we lock our S-foils into attack position.
Here they come!
Welcome to the Lost Cantina, the show that explores the great stories you can find in the Star Wars universe. I'm Jaden.
And I'm Kevin. And Jaden, today we have a baby for you. This is your special baby.
This is very exciting for me to talk about because this is something that I've complained about near constantly since we started talking about the difference between Legends and the canon Star Wars films. We're talking fleets, baby. We're talking fleet configurations and the new Republic's military styles.
This is probably the most nerdy thing we're going to talk about in a while. Like, this is going to be full-blown nerdgasm.
For those of you who are complaining that we didn't talk enough about lore lately, that we've been doing just show dumps, screw you is what I say. I'm overcorrecting from what we had before. So
as Deadpool says, go get your nerd sock ready.
Yes.
All right. So before we get into anything too crazy, though, we're going to do that housekeeping.
Absolutely.
Everybody, you're all used to this by now. You can all email us at thelostcantinapod@gmail.com, as well as find us on all of our socials at The Lost Cantina. It's gonna be fun talking about this nerd stuff because I haven't been in a mega nerd conversation with you in a very long time.
I'm trying to contain myself, so if I seem like I'm rambling, it's because I am. My notes are scattered about. It kind of looks like Charlie in Always Sunny when he's trying to figure out who Pepe Sylvia is. That's kind of what my desk looks like right now.
Don't you have like? You have a lot. I know you have a lot of Legos. I don't remember if you have a lot of Lego Star Wars ships, but I know you have like. Didn't you have like toys and model kit stuff of ships too?
Oh, dude, I got the Lego Death Stars hovering above me.
Yeah, you got like a bunch of shit
off frame. No, and I got the Corellian Corvette for my birthday.
Heck yeah.
And yes, I am close to 30, so don't read too much into that, gift givers.
All right, look, as somebody who's past that, fuck off, okay.
You're calling out my collectibles and stuff, man. Right. I happen to know right off screen there's a giant sarcophagus filled with Power Rangers merchandise.
Yeah, and I have my Gundams. And
you're gonna be mummified in the Red Ranger's fucking outfit.
Well, actually, sarcophagus. Well, it's funny because I told my wife, I told Sarah, I was like, hey, you could donate this shit. Like, don't get me wrong, it could pay for my funeral like 10 times over, but like still, you can donate this. They have museums like Hasbro and like Bandai might want it, like, and Sarah's like, I don't know what the fuck to do with any of this shit.
You should never tell your wife that the things you've been investing thousands of dollars in can be donated when she's gone. You're supposed to be all like, right. No, you can sell these for a small fortune.
I mean, half the shit I have signed is like a lot of money, so that's one of the big reasons. But yeah, we both, let's just say, Jaden, you really like ships.
I love the ships in Star Wars. Ever since I saw that Republic cruiser, the Republic Star Destroyer, just hanging out as the Jedi Starfighters flipped over it into that giant melee in Episode 3 of just ship on ship action, man. I've just been obsessed with learning everything I can about what they do in Star Wars, what they're doing with their fleets. And shout out to Empire at War, because that place is that is a game zone that will just feed your nerd obsession for many years to come.
So I do want to know, I'm curious, you that's how you got into it.
Yeah.
what did you do to learn about ships, and what did you do to learn about like fleet compositions and the way they're used and utilized and all these tactics? Because that's the big thing here is, I know that you are quite literally that upset. Like if I all of a sudden had to like, do combat with ships and they were all Star Wars fleet ships and everything, I would be like, all right, Jaden is my admiral. I need you to fucking like, let's go, man.
I will lock in like Admiral
Yeah.
Thrawn
How did you
before the
how did
Battle
you
of
learn all
Fondor.
this stuff? Like what did you do to learn this?
I'm so glad you asked. Step one, be a virgin all through high school.
Well, okay. All right. Step 1.
Don't
Check.
date women. Just consume Star Wars media. I'm telling you,
Alright,
it's
check.
safer and cheaper. Actually, about the same when you consider all the collectible figures.
Okay.
No, you just read the books, man. Read Legends. They have a lot of great ship combat in there. Star Wars Rebel Dream is a good one that comes to mind that talks a lot about fleet tactics. The
Okay.
X-Wing series in Legends is really, really good. And then to shout out the new canon, jump in on that Star Wars Squadrons game. It's really cheap and it's actually really fun. It's the best flight simulator that's been out for Star Wars, honestly, since probably the Rogue Squadron games.
Okay.
Or X-Wing. There hasn't been a lot of
There
hasn't been a lot of flight sim Star Wars games, now that I think about it, that are like first person with the accuracy and the detail that it feels like you're playing Top Gun in space, which is fun.
All right. Nice. Now, before we get into it, we are going to take a break, but just to prepare you, we are going to be talking about fleets, different types of ships, the composition, some battles, that kind of stuff. And Jaden, you are going to take the helm, if you will, on all this, and you're gonna kind of explain a lot of this to me.
All right, so basically, this whole episode is going to be talking about what we saw in the old canon or Legends and canon itself. We're going to talk about like what the fleets looked like, what their strategies were for the defense of the galaxy, and so on and so forth. And then once we've compared the two, we'll get into some nuances of it. If we want to dive in more later, we always can. Like for example, there's a whole thing on Starfighter squadrons and configurations. Probably want to do a separate episode on that. I think we kind of already did over at Lore Party, if I'm remembering right, for Star Wars Squadron. So we've kind of already covered that. And if not, we can do a more detailed look at it here on the Lost Cantina if you guys want. It just all depends. But right now we're going to talk about the main big fleets. And the first place we're going to look is the one that existed first, and that is the Legends fleets. The first thing you got to understand about the Galactic Civil War that the New Republic kind of was born into, spawning off of the Rebellion, is that it lasted a lot longer in Legends than it did in canon.
Now, that's the thing, is like a lot of people don't realize it didn't just like, okay, cool, the Empire's gone, new government right away, everybody's all cool and happy. Like, there was still a lot of conflict, and there was a lot of reused ships on the Rebellion side, and it wasn't just new shiny new stuff. Now all of a sudden there was a lot of mixing of old and new.
Yeah. So yes and no, Kev. I'm actually going to push back on you a little bit with that. Because the Galactic Civil War only lasted 4 years in the current Star Wars canon.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin, don't look at the screen. I want you to guess how long you think it lasted in Legends.
15, 10.
Try 19.
Oh, okay.
19 years from the Declaration of Rebellion all the way to the end of the Rebellion / forming of the New Republic. I mean, the New Republic actually gets formed about halfway through this conflict, but they still call it like the Galactic Civil War, the Galactic Rebellion War, depending on where you look around.
That is very long. That's what she said.
It's a long time, which is why the two fleets end up looking a lot different, because my first reaction was always like, why are there so much more ships in Legends versus canon? That's bullshit. This happened. The way I've looked into it, it's not the best explanation. In fact, I still hate it. But the reasoning I've seen for it make a little bit more sense when you think about it. But like I said, still don't love it, but we'll get into it. The New Republic in Legends didn't really have the luxury of peacetime. There was always some form of Imperial remnant floating around, either big or large, either active or in a state of Cold War. There's just always a fleet there that there was a threat against. So as a result, since the New Republic never got a chance to like catch its breath and rebuild, a fleet or figure out what their fleet configurations is going to look like, they just had to stick with what they had been doing, which is what you alluded to earlier, Kevin, where they would steal ships from the Empire, they would capture ships in battle, they would buy old ships from junkyards, slap a bunch of cannons on them, and send them out into the fight. They'd have secret rebel factions building ships for them and giving them to them. Like a lot of stuff in there that they could do to acquire ships.
Now, I do have a question.
Yes.
Who was it? This is for Legends.
Yeah.
Who was in charge of keeping these Empire fleets afloat?
So the Imperial fleets, that's a very interesting question. The Imperial fleets were still operating off of the bureaucracy and the structure of the Empire. Mm-hmm. It's just that the Emperor himself had fallen, but the Imperial officers around decided, hey, we can try to... It's your classic, like, when an Emperor falls, like, who's going to climb to the top of the pile?
Got it.
Only problem is the Empire was doing that while also trying to crush a rebellion that had declared itself a sovereign nation. Mm-hmm. So there were still, the big ship spots
because in the newer canon, that's the thing, is they're not necessarily doing that. Some of them are. I would say Moff Gideon is doing it. But
so, yeah, go ahead.
But I was just gonna say, like, I think it sounds more like in the newer stuff they were like, okay, we're waiting for Thrawn. It's not like everybody's just out for themselves as much because they don't have as much security with that. It's very much like, okay, we need to figure out what the fuck to do to like bring us back.
So yes, in new canon, we see like a much smaller version of what we see out of the Legends Imperial Remnant, because the Imperial Remnant that we see in like that Moff Gideon has and like that Shadow Council, they are going to be significantly smaller than the Imperial fleet that they're facing in Legends, because in Legends, the Empire did not fall apart all at once.
Yeah.
Individual planets would break away and declare themselves for the New Republic. So it was like a spider web of retreat that the Imperial forces had to do before they ended up in what's called the Imperial Remnant. It's a region of space that is still controlled by the Empire, and what they call themselves the Imperial Remnant, because they're a government that still has the Imperial way of life, but it doesn't really have it has the authoritarian nature, but not the authoritarian figurehead, if that makes sense. So because of that, the New Republic actually also had a steady stream of opponents to fight, but also equipment to capture and use for themselves, including many Imperial Star Destroyers.
Hell yeah, there you go. That's what we want to see, baby.
So just imagine like an Imperial Star Destroyer coming in, but the hull is like got red on it from painting it as New Republic colors.
Nice.
And the interesting thing that the rebellion would do is that they were still, using their tactics that they had been doing since the rebellion era, just with more troops on their side and also more equipment. But they would take that equipment that they'd captured from the Empire and actually repurpose it to fit their doctrine. So, like, when they captured TIE fighters, what's one thing we all know about TIE fighters? TIE fighters don't have fucking shields. That sucks. But they didn't care because they were just replacing them with troops all the time. Now, the big difference, though, is that the rebellion cares about its pilots. So what it did was actually pretty clever. It attached shield generators to each TIE fighter that it captured, along with a paint job to signify it as a New Republic fighter.
Yeah.
So you can see that they would be like, that they would take the doctrine that they had of like, hey, our crew and our equipment is not expendable. It is not, just because we have numbers now and we're starting to become on par forces-wise with the Empire, it doesn't mean we're going to throw our troops away for nothing.
Got it.
Which I think is a pretty cool development on there, just to see like that they were embracing the technology that they captured. They didn't see it as like an evil symbol of tyranny. They saw it as, hey, this is a piece of tech we can use. And you got to remember, a Star Destroyer is a fleet unto itself. It's like an American aircraft carrier in our times. You know, one of them can control a system. So why on earth, if you captured one intact, why on earth would you like take it and throw it apart for nothing? You know, which is a question we're going to find out in canon. But
so then for Legends, so in Legends,
yes,
what kind of would you? Okay, so the fighting is the same as the original canon movies, like the 4, 5, 6, like the way they would fight, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So what type of compositions would you say they would have in at that time? Like what are the type of compositions of fleets? What would they do? What are some of those tactics?
Sure. With the rebellion, they're the more interesting one to watch visually on screen. First of all, because of the uniqueness of all their ships. A typical fleet like Rebellion era would be like a Mon Calamari cruiser, a Nebulon B frigate or two, probably two if it's a bigger fleet. 4 to 6 Corellian corvettes, which are the blockade runners, and then just a nice old smattering of transport ships of various sizes, makes, and models. And you know those, which we now found in the reason that those transport shuttles were at Endor, by the way, it's kind of morbid as shit. They were target saturation. Which, if you don't know what that means that they were just literally sent there so that there was more dots on screen for the Empire to shoot at.
Oh,
it would be like, hey, you
and
see
they
that
weren't automated at all.
No, they had crews. They had fully operational crews running those. This, like, the Battle of Endor was the last ditch. That's why you see those transport ships mixed in.
Do those people know that that's what their purpose is for?
Absolutely. That's how much they cared about the rebellion.
So essentially, they almost are like suicide, mission.
Well, they're not suicide missions, but they're like, hey, we know, like, if we're engaged in. So when I'm talking a typical rebellion fleet, those transports tended to go away after they started gaining momentum potential. So those things would actually be actual cargo ships, transporting troops and whatnot.
Got it. Okay.
But at Endor, it was like an all or nothing. Just, hey, we have every ship is here. Even the smallest transport ship had a laser blaster that could take down a couple of TIE fighters.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I'm just saying for like typical, like stereotypical fleet you would see on screen, it would be Mon Calamari cruiser, a couple of Nebulon Bs, 3 or 4. I would say honestly, larger fleets that have 6 Corellian corvettes around it, acting as patrol ships to screen for TIE fighters, and then various transport ships that would go with. Sometimes you'd get assault frigates, but those are still not as well known.
So we're gonna get into the canon stuff here in a bit, but when it comes to the non-canon, I guess the Legends.
Yeah.
How big was the Republic fleet?
That's an interesting question. We know that the Imperial fleet at the height of its power had 25,000 Star Destroyers.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Man.
Okay. Or what? Well, it was like I think in the book that this was written down, it described them as like assets. We don't really know what that means. That could mean 25,000 Star Destroyers. That could mean 25,000 fleet groups. Okay. Which honestly, something making making it the Star Wars universe is interesting because there's never enough ships to cover the whole thing.
Yeah.
There's hundreds of thousands of habitable planets and trillions of species.
Yeah.
So like writers, when they're writing Legends books, they're not really sure of the context of the greater world, and by world I mean galaxy. So it's always difficult to say realistically how many ships were around, but we do know that that at some point they would be on the Republic would have been on par with the Empire in terms of fighting capabilities. So probably at that same level. Let's call it, you split it in half.
Is this post Emperor death, or
this is post the Emperor's death? This is I'm going to say like a typical New Republic fleet, like 3 to 4 years into basically where the Galactic Civil War ends in canon is where I'm accounting for it in the Legends area.
Okay.
Try to make this as even as possible.
Got it. Okay.
Unfortunately, that gets a little hard because when I mentioned that the New Republic likes to capture ships and use them, that includes a super star destroyer.
That's a big boy.
Yes, like Vader's personal flagship. The rebels managed to capture that one, the Lusankia.
Mm-hmm.
So the New Republic had its own super star destroyer until Wedge blew it up. But that's a whole other story. That's
So how in Legends, how do people feel about seeing Star Destroyers on their side? Do they just see it, okay, it's a tool and it's just another ship? Or do they feel some sort of, because remember, the Empire used these ships as means of fear
yes.
and intimidation. So now that they are part of the Rebel fleet or the Republic fleet, how do people feel about this? Would you say, like in Legends, like how
It's
did
really
people
funny
feel
you
about
you
that?
ask that because there's literally PR in Star Wars.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean,
The
I've seen the
ship
posters.
the
I've
star
seen
destroyers when they're
posters.
captured, they actually get renamed, which is really funny because they go from like Emperor's Monocle of Destruction, and they rename it, and they're like Eagle of Hope.
Oh, wow.
You're like, all right, sure, yeah, we'll go with that. And of course, they slap like the good old Republic red on it, a
Yeah.
couple of rebel symbols on the sides. And I mean, I think a lot of people in that Star Wars universe, like, they realize, like, hey, this shit is too valuable for us to just decommission and throw away in a dumpster.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's probably one of those, like, it's uncomfortable, and I know that the New Republic and then later the Galactic Alliance started to like phase out the Star Destroyer like model, but it still had relevance in their fleets. It still had
I mean,
like
it's like the Venator class, right? Like
yeah,
it was. Now, did in Legends are there still any more of those, or are they all gone?
those are pretty much gone. Those are you'd find them occasionally on like smaller planets that would like get it out of surplus, and um, the Empire took a lot longer to phase them out in Legends versus canon because they were just trying to get their new Star Destroyer models up and running as quick as they could, and it took longer than anticipated. Which is why, if you notice in A New Hope, they kept talking about like dissolving the Senate. They didn't dissolve the Senate until they felt they had full military control of everything, and that included having their fleets up to the point where they felt they could be powerful enough to do that. So I would guess by well before, but in Legends, probably a little bit after the BBY, zero BBY.
Got it.
The New Republic fleet is a much larger and, interestingly enough, a lot more flexible fleet than I think a lot of people realize. You have and on top of that, you have 19 years of experienced officers, men, and crew either still in active service or rotated out to give their knowledge to the lower enlisted men in training. So
Yeah.
right off the bat, I'm telling you right now, I think this fleet is a much more impressive fleet than what we're going to see out of canon. But there is a reason for that.
Do tell.
I will, but I think we're going to take a quick break before we get into it.
All right, Jaden. So, explain what
Yes.
is this? I am now curious.
So, in canon, the war only lasted 4 years.
Okay.
And on top of that, the New Republic essentially has complete and total victory in those 4 years.
Yep. That's pretty quick, to be honest.
It's pretty
especially
quick.
with the amount of planets and the amount of species
Assets.
and planets that assets that they have to like coalesce together to say, okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're not gonna do the same thing, but the old thing, but we're gonna do a new thing. And it's like it's a lot of bureaucracy coming back,
Yeah.
maintaining some status quo stuff. Like it's a whole the government, that's just the government. Now you got all these ships that you have to like kind of have inventory of still and continue. You just now gained new assets from the Empire, quote unquote,
Yep.
falling and all that. So it is there's a lot to the organization.
the fact that it only lasted 4 years meant, and then also that there was not a extended period of retaliation. New Republic basically was like, "Hey, we won this thing outright. There is no one left." Of course, we know they're wrong with Moff Gideon and his Shadow Council running around.
Yep.
So the New Republic basically said, "Hey, we won. GG. Time to hang up the capes."
All right.
And they started to disassemble not only the ships that they would capture. Star Destroyers were immediately, they cared way more about PR in Disney than they did because they were like, that is the tool of the enemy. We need to toss it in the smelter immediately.
I mean, what is Disney? A PR organization.
Exactly.
Hey.
Which, I mean, it makes a little sense because of what they had. You know, it's maintaining that equipment would have been a huge expense. They were no longer an authoritarian organization.
Mm-hmm.
And so they wanted to just get rid of it, especially for the PR. Now, interestingly, I wanted to mention this in the previous segment, but I'll mention it here. I know we think it's crazy that like someone would use like weapons of their oppressors as like as equipment, but we actually have precedent for that in real life. Kevin, I don't know if you know this, but a lot of German equipment was actually given to smaller nations.
Correct.
As surplus because they didn't have anything else. In fact, one of the last tanks, the German Panzers, was actually used in a war against Israel, I think in like the 60s or 70s. Because it was just surplus equipment that someone just got their hands on. And so it's not, I think that's why in the old canon it was not unrealistic for people to think like, hey, we'll use this old gear.
I mean, you also see like in real life too, you have like the M1 Garand that was still used for a lot of stuff. And then you have the Mosin in World War II that was used. They were doing stuff with that still in the Cold War.
Yeah.
You had Russia giving them, or at the time USSR giving them out in the Middle East and stuff. And that was a whole, I mean, yeah, you're going to use and reuse as much as possible.
But apparently not in the canon New Republic. They said, nope, all that shit needs to go away. In fact, we're going to reduce our own military on top of that by a whopping 90%.
That just sounds stupid.
It is stupid.
Why?
Because of, and this is the part that bugs me the most about this, is that Mon Mothma is the one that introduces this plan.
Ugh.
And I just feel like she's not that stupid.
No, she's not.
I feel like she's much smarter than that. And that's what bugs me, is that I think that if you ever read Aftermath, the Star Wars book,
okay,
it's not good. It's weirdly written, but also like it was like right after Disney got a hold of Star Wars. So it was like, all right, this person's going to decide what's happening in Star Wars now. And it was like, he doesn't know any character besides Mon Mothma, which is why he makes that writing decision, I think.
That's disappointing.
Yeah, because Mon Mothma's too smart to do this. But it's what canon is now until further notice, so I guess that works. The New Republic set about to reduce its military by 90%, and as well as destroying assets that they had reclaimed from the Empire, which is, I mean, it would have to be most of the fleet, because there's no way a huge Star Destroyer force could be hiding out there. I think like a few could have slipped past the inventory checklist, but I don't think all of them could have.
What gets me is like cutting 90%, right? Like you just had a big, technically you would say with the Separatists, like you had a civil war to a degree, right?
Yeah.
You didn't have an army. You had to create an army, and it was a whole shit show, and the whole thing was a fucking mess because nobody was prepared. They didn't, they weren't prepared. So now then you get steamrolled, right? So now you get steamrolled by the Empire. They just walk right in. They're like, hey, what's up? Here we are. You had to build an army to go fight them, and you had to go defeat them, and that whole thing had to happen. And now you're like, all right, I guess we won. Let's get rid of everything now. It's like,
yeah.
What?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't, especially with when we see like Mando, how lawless the Outer Rim is.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you guys, why would this, like, I mean, the problem is that what they're doing is they're setting up for, the First Order to take their place in 30 years or to make them as weak as possible. But I'm like, someone's got to see this. This is not subtle at all.
I get the whole pacifism aspect and like the concepts behind it, but it doesn't make any governmental sense, if you will, to let your government have to be vulnerable in that sense, right? So I don't see the point in having your government not have any type of formal protection
of
and
policing
or enforcement.
force.
Yeah. It's strange.
The Republic didn't have an army for like 800 years because it had the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
This new Republic in canon doesn't have Jedi, and it doesn't have a fleet to defend itself.
That makes sense.
It's why would you do this? It's just silly.
Makes no sense.
Now, I do want to give them some credit, though. They do have some new ship designs that are actually pretty cool.
Okay.
The doctrine that they kind of came up with now that they were like at peace was to create a much smaller force, but with heavier firepower. And where did they get that from? It's from a brand new ship called the Starhawk.
Ooh, Starhawk. They do have good branding.
They do. The Starhawk is cool. That is a cool name.
That's a dope name.
Starhawks are actually built out of captured Star Destroyers.
Okay.
Including, most importantly, their tractor beams. They took, I think it's like, they think it takes 5 of them. They stick 5 Star Destroyer tractor beams into the nose of the ship. And then what they do is that ship then goes in. If it encounters a Star Destroyer, it locks it in place with its tractor beam and then just punches the shit out of it.
I think that's cool.
Yeah.
Moving parts. Let's take it.
I think it's cool. And like, again, that's built out of captured Star Destroyers. So if you think about it, it's like being parasitic. It's like grabbing one. It's like, all right, you're coming back with me.
That's cool. I want to see that. I want to see that on screen. What the fuck?
Well, you can if you play Star Wars Squadrons.
No, but I mean movies.
Yeah, I know. We'll see.
But yeah, no, Star Wars Squadrons is fun.
Yeah. That whole sequence when you're helping destroy the Star Destroyer is really cool.
It's pretty sick.
And that's where that's how you can still see there's starfighters involved with Star Wars Squadrons.
Mm-hmm.
So they're able to handle, the occasional warlord that pops up with these Starhawks, but the problem is they don't have enough of them. There's a much smaller fleet that's more lethal, but the problem is that you have a big galaxy and it can't be everywhere at once. It can't possibly guard the entire galaxy with the size that it is. In fact, we run into that in Mandalorian when they're like, God, there's like 6 pilots for this entire sector. It's like, what? You guys are having pilots act as police officers because you're so short-handed?
Yeah, that's another thing. Jobs. We're going to talk economics now.
Yes.
You just got rid of everybody's job. What are you going to do? What are you going to supplement that with? Like, now you have people who could have had a
millions of stormtroopers who want their
yeah,
who need their pensions. They're like, "Where's my health plan?"
All those stormtroopers that are like, "Okay, never mind." They don't have jobs now. All those people that were in the rebel forces, they don't have jobs now.
Yep.
What are you going to do? Like, you need to supplement that in some way. And I think that's another reason to keep a military at least.
Especially since they're the ones that know how to shoot.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not the same thing, but it kind of reminds me of the Whiskey Rebellion back in the early days of America. It's like you got a bunch of veterans who were like, hey, we fought not to pay taxes, and now you're making us pay taxes. This kind of sucks. So, okay, so let's focus in here. The New Republic, small fleet, right? Can't possibly patrol the galaxy on their own. So what they do is this is something that's like, all right, we're going to get around this. They make it so that individual planets actually have their own defense forces. So not all the ships are getting trashed and thrown away and recycled. They're actually getting supplied to other worlds to add to their individual defenses. Now, we get conflicting reports on this because, like, in Battlefront 2, in the DLC, we see the First Order come in and attack the New Republic, and they seem to subdue the entire galaxy in a matter of hours with the fleet that they've built in secret. So Don't know how the Galaxy's fighters could have lost in a couple of days, but also still had a giant fleet to send in Rise of Skywalker, because that's where canonically they're saying that's where the fleet came from, was that they were all the defense fleets of all the planets, and they just showed up at the right time to defeat everybody at Exegol. I don't see how both of those things could be true. I'm sure we'll get an explanation of that at some point.
I mean, that's what got me, was the fleet that you describe in Legends is still massive, and the fleet that we don't have is so tiny. We get
wiped out by Starkiller Base.
Yeah.
The main Republic fleet is destroyed in that moment. And it's like that entire fleet was in one system?
Because
that's
they already
crazy.
took away most of it.
Yeah, you chip away all of it after 19. Now, here's the other thing, though. There's the one caveat I will give. We don't know what Heir to the Empire is going to do to the New Republic.
True.
I would like to think that it would cause, if I was the New Republic, that would make me go, if it shows up, destroys what little fleet they have, and then Thrawn gets defeated, and have them go like, what I know is going to happen is they're going to go, see, we killed what's left of the Empire. They're definitely never coming back. Get rid of more ships. But I would think that it would be like, oh, geez, I just got punched in the face by a stranger I didn't see coming. Better keep my gun instead of fucking throwing it away.
Yeah. Well, okay, so here's what I'm going to say. This is already taking place during The Mandalorian, which how many years now is The Mandalorian?
I believe Mando is set 5 years after A New Hope.
Okay, and when does the first sequel trilogy movie take place?
30 years after A New Hope, I believe.
30 years. So let's say,
let me make sure.
This is hypothetical here. This is just my speculation. Let's just say 5 to 6 years, right? Heir to the Empire occurs maybe within that first 10-year period, right? And a vast majority of the new fleet gets completely murked. And now you have that 20-year to rebuild, but there's an issue, right?
Yep.
What the issue is, I don't know. They have to come up with something. But I feel like we're going to see a big hit to whatever military there is post, Emperor Palpatine's demise.
Yeah,
right?
I think there will be. I mean, I think we're going to get some cool fleet action. I feel like Admiral Thrawn is the fleet guy, so we got to see what that looks like.
It'll be dope.
It'll be really, really cool. I'm excited for that. All right, Kevin. So now that you've heard about canon and legends,
okay,
I wanted you to look at the doctrines of that. We're going to go with the New Republic in Legends first, which they have a large fleet, diverse ships, diverse crews, and they're scattered across the galaxy so they can quickly respond to threats. Or do you like the New Republic of Canon, which is a smaller, we're going to call it a hyper-lethal fleet that has to go to certain spots but can't be everywhere at once, with smaller supplemental fleets scattered throughout the galaxy to buy time, essentially, for that New Republic fleet to show up?
Neither. I want droids. Roger, Roger. I think the Legends one's better. I understand the concept of having like a smaller, super hyper lethal. Like, I get that, right?
Yeah.
But
because let's be clear. Let's the First Order wouldn't have destroyed this fleet in one surprise attack if they thought it wasn't going to be an issue. So I think we can infer from that this fleet is a hyper lethal fleet. That's the only way that this doctrine could possibly work. Is if one fleet was so strong that it could wipe out any threat in the galaxy by itself.
I think the biggest issue for the canon fleet is the fact that the galaxy itself is massive, and to not be able to cover that ground and that surface area. I think that's the biggest problem for them. So that's why I think the Legends fleet, while it may not be as hyper lethal as the cannon one, I just think it's better to be able to have more peeps that can do more. I've been playing StarCraft like for the last month with my cousin, both my cousins. We've been playing StarCraft, and I'm like, I keep telling my cousins, I'm like, don't build like a small group of like Marines, right? And then upgrade them like crazy while everybody else is building a bigger army and they're not even upgrading because you only have so many Marines. If I build a fuck ton of Marines up and then I upgrade them, they're going to be way better. So I see it as and by the way, I'm not a main Terran player for those StarCraft players. I am usually a TOS player. Just I've been playing Terran to help.
I don't know what that means, but you're a fucking nerd.
All right. Anyway, the Queen of Blades will rise again. So basically, I think the biggest hurdle is the surface area of all this. So I think that it's the Legends one for me. Canon fucked up.
I would tend to agree. I think that even with the story elements that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are trying to put in there to like make this all make sense, it doesn't fit very well with what we know about just the galaxy in general. So I think Legends is a lot better. I think that, I mean, you know my love for Legends. I think that it's a more perfect system, and I think it allows for better stories, to be honest, because you can have like smaller fleets going around like encountering threats and getting destroyed or saving the day. Like there's a Legends book that I love that Luke Skywalker actually gets like his own little flotilla. It's like an experiment to have Jedi like leading flotillas. And like
that's cool. That's actually really cool.
Yeah, it's cool because like you get like in the book, like they give you like, oh, his flagship is a Nebulon B, and like his, I don't know if this, I'm paraphrasing, but like, oh, he has this many ships in the fleet, like this many TIE fighters have been converted, like this many X-Wings. So like throughout the book, you're reading it and you're like, it'll be like, an X-Wing crashes on the surface of the planet. And it's like, oh man, they only have like 10 of those left now. Like, it's just cool to have an idea of like, this is a big fleet. And, in the scenario, like they're trapped in this area and there's no way to contact the greater Republic fleet. So it's just that fleet. I love seeing
that's cool.
Dwindling resources, but with determined people using them. So like you get a lot more of those opportunities with a larger universe of ships to pull from.
So my other question is, in the canon verse, we now start the first movie with them already knowing about the First Order, being very aware of the First Order.
Yes.
And what the first, like, so would you say that Republic was building ships at that moment? Do you think they were expanding their fleet?
So
because they were like, oh shit.
Actually, no. I mean, they were still building ships, but it was at the because we see that in The Last Jedi when was it Guillermo del Toro? Yeah, when he's like the hacker guy and he's like, oh look, see, the bad guys build the ships for the good guys too. It was like, so they were still building their ships, but they were building them at like the same pace they would to just arm their fleets and do the regular upgrades to the planetary defense forces. But the First Order had effectively fooled the New Republic into believing that they didn't exist officially. So like there was no urgent rearmament in progress. And why the galaxy looks so rough in The Last Jedi.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
It makes sense. I don't like it, but it makes sense. Yeah, in canon, the First Order only controlled the galaxy for like a year.
Fucking losers.
Yeah, right? It's no time at all.
A fucking year? That's it?
Yeah. Because Force Awakens happens, and then The Last Jedi is like a day later.
Wow.
And then a year later for The Rise of Skywalker.
Losers.
Yeah.
Losers. Man.
So, Kevin, I know you're not much of a Legends guy, but is there anything that you've read in your travels that you would like to see added into canon?
I mean, I I loved Luthen's little dogfight in Andor so much, and I loved the fact that the ship that he fought, the main ship, was a early Star Destroyer style ship, as they were still coming up with the concept at that time. But also, I loved that that was the actual concept art used for
The Star
Star Wars,
Destroyer.
for the ships, the Star Destroyers and stuff. So I thought that was really cool. And I did notice that we have seen some concept art, like ships that have made it into on screen, on camera stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that'd be really fun to see more of that. But I I really want to learn more about ships in general. Like, I think it would be really cool to watch someone build a ship. Like, again, like I had fun with that kind of stuff,
Yep.
in Mando. I want to see more of that. But also I really want to see some old Republic ships like brought in.
That would be a lot of fun to see, like
Like,
fleets.
it would be sick.
I've always said that the Rebellion should have tried to get their hands on a Venator Star Destroyer, because a Venator
Yeah.
Star Destroyer would have worked so well in Republic fleets because of how they like to attack with fighters.
Yep.
That, like, just having a space aircraft carrier would have been so much fun, which is why it
So
was
the
so
other
much
thing-
fun in Clone Wars.
The other thing too is, like, I want to see old Republic ships though too.
Oh.
Like I do want to see prequel ships. Like, I actually did mean that when I was saying that. But
Yeah.
now that you say that, like, I also want to see, like, I'm thinking about like Jedi Survivor and stuff, and like seeing the really cool ships in Ahsoka, right? Like the fucking Eye of Sion was so sick.
Yeah.
And like that was cool. But now I want to see, like, it reminded me of old, like, old Republic ships, right?
Well, that's
Like when I
where
was
we get the
playing-
Hammerhead Corvettes from in
well, yeah, like I was seeing, like, when I was playing Star Wars: The Old Republic, like I still have my account on that MMO, bro. Like,
Yeah.
have not touched the game in a hot minute, but I still have my account.
Oh, you
And
want
I
the
have my
old
dope-
Republic stuff, man.
I
Ooh.
have that ship that I got for getting the collector's edition and all that, and like all that stuff was super cool. All of the armor, all of the ships in general, like everything just looked so sleek.
Yep.
Futuristic, old, but sleek as fuck. And I want that kind. I want to have a little bit of style. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. No, I get you.
Practicality is good, but I want some style.
For me, if there's one ship that I could have canon again, it would be the Errant Venture. It is
Okay.
a Star Destroyer that got turned into a casino.
Oh, that says a lot. Capitalism, baby.
It's captured by a smuggler,
Mhm.
and they surrendered to him and not to the fleet that he was a part of. So he argued to the New Republic that technically they didn't surrender to the New Republic, they surrendered to me.
All right, I feel that.
And Talon Card and Wedge Antilles actually had to negotiate with the New Republic, like, hey guys, if we just take a bunch of cannons off this thing, it's just a giant ship. And
Yeah.
because the New Republic was like, hey, you're a smuggler, you're going to use this for crimes. And he was like, maybe. Not that you can prove, because I have a giant gun. They're basically like, can you just give us the nuke? And he's like, no, I want to commit crimes with it.
Oh.
And Wedge was like, hey, what if we just take like most of the guns off this thing so it's just a giant building? And the guy went from like, man, I just went from warlord to Donald Trump.
Oh.
Guess I'm just going to open a casino.
What's the difference?
Except his doesn't go bankrupt.
Ooh, shit.
Who said that? That's weird.
Well,
But yeah, I would love the Errant Venture to be in Star Wars. I think that'd be something fun. That's like a weird, fun thing that could get mixed in.
I think it'd be really cool to have like a ship RTS game. I'd have fun with that.
Try it.
ships.
Have you ever played Empire at War?
No.
You should
I
try
know.
it, man. It's space RTS. It's awesome.
I'll have to fuck with that.
Yeah, skip the ground battles though. Everyone knows they're lame.
Well, I would say final thoughts. I think the Legends canon is going to win there. I think a regular canon is. Just,
I do too.
If I put both fleets up against each other, I think Legends would just wipe the map.
Yep. Now, something interesting we're going to talk about hopefully soon. If you guys like this episode, please let us know, because I love nerding out about Star Wars ships. I think we should talk about the Imperial fleet formations sometime soon.
I'm into it.
All right, awesome. Well, that about wraps us up. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please take a second to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever else you listen to your podcasty goodness. It really helps us grow the show. And be sure to connect with us on Twitch, Instagram, and Twitter at The Lost Cantina. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will catch you on the next one.